If my people want me back, I'll certainly go.
What do you think of when you hear Zanzibar? Is it the idyllic Indian Ocean beaches, beautifully crafted dhows laying still on beaches? Or is it the culture, its diverse melting pot of people, spices, music and food? Or is it the hybrid architecture borrowing from Romani, Indian and African influence? In September of this year, a little-known sultan residing in a resort front in Portsmouth for 56 years was finally granted the wish to leave exile for Oman at the ailing age of 91. Southsea is a historical seaside resort south of Portsmouth and is known for its Edwardian architecture, its beachfront and piers, and it was home to the last constitutional monarch of Zanzibar, who lived in a semi-detached home on a quiet road. So who was Sultan Jamshid bin Abdullah of Zanzibar? Well, he was born in 1929 to Sir Abdullah bin Khalifa and Sayyida Tuhfa bint Ali in Unguja, one of the two islands making up Zanzibar. This was when Zanzibar was a protectorate under British rule after the British made agreements with the German ruling mainland Tanganyika in 1890. His father was Sir Abdullah simply because he was bequeathed honours by Queen Elizabeth and her father King George, namely CMG, or the Companion of the Order of St. Michael St. George, and KBE, Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire. Jamshid was sent to the Eton of Egypt, the Victoria College, whose alumni include Jordanian monarchs and 21st century scholars and thinkers such as Edward Said. Subsequently, he was sent to the Royal Navy College in Dartmouth, clearly being groomed to replace his father one day. His father, Sultan Abdullah bin Khalifa, on the other hand, was made Sultan in October of the year 1960.
Zanzibar is a British protectorate ruled by the Sultan, His Highness Sayyid Khalifa bin Harub, GCMG, GBE, who acceded in 1911 and celebrated his Silver Jubilee in 1936. The Sultan's ancestors actually claimed sovereignty over the whole of Africa. When the flute sounds over Zanzibar, it used to be said, the whole of Africa dances. Today, a strip on the coast of Kenya, 10 miles wide, and the island of Mombasa are the only other areas over which the Sultan has dominion. The daily inspection of his personal guards is always attended by a cluster of tourists outside the palace gates. A real Sultan. Just wait till we tell him back home.
At the time, independence was being fought left and right in the African continent. Zanzibar was preparing for its independence by creating a parliament and administration. Here is Jamshid's father pictured with the first ever Zanzibari parliamentarians following its first ever general election in 1961. Jamshid's father passed away in 1963 after a short reign of 3 years. Crowds gathered to watch Jamshid take the throne. A second election took place in 1963. The ZNP-ZPPP alliance, or Zanzibar Nationalist Party and Zanzibar and Pemba's People Party, won despite only getting 45% of the vote. Gerrymandering was suspected. The Afro-Shirazi Party, ASP, and the majority of the population felt disenfranchised by the Arab-led government. December 1963, Zanzibar's independence was granted. The British also granted the ZNP-ZPPP alliance right to rule. Police officers of mainland origin were dismissed, politicising the police force. The Arab-led parliament reignited long-existing division and discrimination. The new government also sought to strengthen ties with the anti-Western Gamal Abdel Nasser. This worried the British, who contemplated stationing troops on the island, but pulled back in fear of nationalist sentiments.
A sense of hope.
In the early hours of the 12th of January 1964, 1 month after independence, a group of armed men began what would become known as the Zanzibar Revolution.
It was very early in the morning here, just after dawn prayers, when we started hearing staccato of guns. I came out of the house and saw people discussing, what is that? It was just a sense of fear and people were worried.
What Ahmed didn't know was that by the time he heard that gunfire, a band of a few hundred revolutionaries had already attacked the main police barracks, taken over the radio station, and deposed the Sultan and his government. But when the announcement was made over the airwaves some hours later, it sounded, well, foreign.
Everybody was glued to the radio when this voice, which sounded of a mainlander, broke the airwaves and said that the government was overthrown. It was a bit frightening.
So they sounded like a mainlander from somewhere in Africa. Was this voice speaking in the local language Kiswahili?
It was in Kiswahili, but the accent was not quite Zanzibari, you see. And that brought fear to most of the people, actually.
The voice belonged to one John Okello, originally from Uganda and not a native Kiswahili speaker.
He has been issuing orders to the people over Radio Zanzibar all day. If anybody disobeys my orders, I will take action 88 times stronger than before. He said.
The Sultan and his staffers fled on a yacht to London. The revolution aftermath is estimated to be in thousands, mainly Arab victims, with news reporters citing a mass grave in the island. On April of the same year, the Afro-Shirazi party leader unified Zanzibar with mainland Tanganyika, giving birth to the new country, the Republic of Tanzania. After the revolution, the exiled Sultan was given £100,000, which allowed him to live modestly in Southsea. For security reasons, he was refused permission to settle in Oman. Today, the Sultan has been granted the wish of returning to his ancestral homeland of Oman, 56 years since the revolution, where his distant relative is its incoming ruler, Haytham bin Tariq.